A good World War II story doesn't start with a battlefield map or a list of generals. It starts with the overlooked, the improvised, the things official reports rarely mention, but soldiers talked about quietly years later. Secret pistol modifications fall into that category. These weren't factory improvements or polished blueprints approved in offices far from the front. These were gritty, desperate innovations born from necessity. And when you dig into them, they reveal uncomfortable truths about survival, adaptability, and the lengths fighters would go to in order to stay alive. If you're here on battlefield survival, you already know the small weapons often tell the biggest stories. This guide opens with 7 of the most revealing lessons from these hidden modifications, and why they matter not just as history but as practical knowledge for modern survival enthusiasts and serious buffs who want more than surface-level trivia. Lesson 1 is that soldiers modified pistols because standard-issue designs failed in extreme environments. In North Africa, for example, German and British troops saw their pistols choke from sand abrasion. Cleaning kits were scarce, so soldiers began polishing feed ramps by hand with whatever fine grit they could find. Some even shaved magazine lips to control how rounds presented under sandy conditions. The shocking lesson here is simple. Environments ruin perfect designs. Translating this today, if you rely on a sidearm for wilderness survival or remote travel, you should understand how to field-fit your gear to your environment. In muddy terrain, focus on tight tolerances. In dusty areas, prioritize looser cycling and smoother feed geometry. World War II soldiers didn't wait for factory solutions. They adapted their equipment with what they had. Lesson 2 is that concealment forced radical downsizing that militaries never planned for. The clandestine resistance groups in France and Poland routinely filed down pistol grips, trimmed triggers, or shortened barrels on captured weapons so they could hide them under jackets or smuggle them past checkpoints. This wasn't done for aesthetics, it was for survival under occupation. When thinking about practical application today, consider what your own concealment requirement would be. If you were backpacking through regions where you must stay discreet for safety reasons, the World War II lesson is to focus on profile reduction rather than pure firepower. Even today, shaping gear around your clothing and mobility matters as much as performance. Lesson 3 is that reliability mattered more than power, leading many fighters to intentionally weaken their pistols. This sounds counterintuitive until you look at reports from Eastern Front partisans who deliberately underloaded springs or lightly polished chambers to keep captured pistols from overpressuring with inconsistent ammunition. When scavenged ammunition varies wildly, the wrong spring tension can get you killed. The takeaway for modern survivalists is that your equipment should be tuned for the worst-case conditions, not the ideal ones. If you're preparing gear for long-term emergencies where resupply is uncertain, the World War II approach would be to prioritize function with suboptimal inputs rather than chase maximum ballistic output. Lesson 4 is that sound suppression was far more common than most documentaries acknowledge, though usually improvised rather than engineered. Silence pistols weren't only for spies. Some Soviet reconnaissance units built crude suppressor sleeves from oil filters or machine tubes packed with whatever damping material they could find. These weren't Hollywood quiet, but they reduced muzzle signature enough to avoid immediate detection. The shocking lesson here is how much impact a good enough solution can have. If applied practically, this underscores the value of noise discipline in any stealth-dependent scenario. Whether you're hunting, signaling, or avoiding attention in a survival situation, controlling sound with improvised tools can be more achievable than people think. Lesson 5 is that many modifications came from battlefield scavenging rather than planning. American soldiers sometimes replaced 1911 triggers and safeties with parts stripped from enemy pistols simply because they felt better or operated faster. Conversely, German troops frequently swapped Luger magazines for sturdier P-38 mags when they could make them fit. This wasn't standard procedure. It was raw adaptation. For today's survival-minded individuals, the lesson is that cross-compatibility is knowledge worth learning. Understanding how different systems align, even crudely, allows you to improvise replacements in the field. World War II fighters understood that your gear is only as dependable as your ability to repair or substitute it on the spot. Lesson 6 is that wartime stress pushed many fighters to modify grips and ergonomics far beyond regulation. From taping wooden slabs to broom-handle Mausers to carving deep finger grooves into 1911 grips, the goal was always the same: maintain control under adrenaline, cold, and exhaustion. The deeper truth here is that fine motor skills vanish under stress. When applying this to your own preparation, customize your grip surfaces for your personal hand structure and the environment you expect to operate in. World War II modifications remind us that ergonomics are not cosmetic. They're survival critical. Lesson 7 is that secret pistol modifications expose the gap between military doctrine and real combat. Armies issued pistols as backup weapons, administrative tools, or symbols of authority. But in cities, forests, and resistance networks, pistols became primary lifelines. Fighters modified their pistols because official doctrine did not align with their reality. The modern reflection is powerful. Always test your gear under the conditions you'll actually face, not the ones someone else wrote down. Doctrine doesn't save you. Adaptation does. These 7 lessons show that the hidden side of World War II pistol modifications wasn't about exotic gadgets. It was about survival, ingenuity, and refusing to accept equipment as it was handed down. If you value this kind of serious history and practical knowledge blended together, make sure you subscribe to Battlefield Survival and share this guide so more people who appreciate real in-depth analysis can find it.